folks. Good morning. How are everybody? How are ya? How you am? Let's get in here, get things started. Of course, I am TanktheElder. This channel is Magic and Mayhem. I am very crazy and building a Star Destroyer here in my Minecraft Theoretically Forever world. So let's go ahead and pull things up so we all can get a good look at crazy things that are going on today. Alright, I'm set up. So at the very least, we're gonna do at least one inventory's worth of continuing to build the ribs of the Star Destroyer and doing our best to make it look reasonable. So, unfortunately, this is going to be the super enthralling graphics of watching me back up on a line of stone. Cobblestone at that, so. But here we are again. My wife, Alora, and I have been trying to sort out how to make our lives work best for us, and we're getting as good as we can manage at this point. So at this point, hopefully, I can start getting consistent about being here Wednesdays and Fridays, building on this big, beautiful Star Destroyer, or shall I say the big, beautiful space boat. So excuse me. If you're wondering what is currently in my glass to be drunk, that is actually basil tea from the fresh basil my wife has out in our garden. Hopefully soon she'll have a video up, excuse me, on her specific channel, Mountains and Mayhem, about our garden, and you'll get to see the basil plants there and all the other wonderful things that she has out there that we will get to consume once they have grown to the appropriate size, which is one of the most fantastic things about having a garden, because if you've never had fresh produce from a local, like either from your own garden or from a friend's garden, excuse me, I am still waking up. Maybe I need to figure out something where I can put a yawn counter up there for everybody, because this is essentially me trying to get up more or less early in the morning, like I was working a first shift job, and coming downstairs to try and go full throttle as soon as I get out of bed. But yeah, the difference between a smaller, well-tended garden vegetable and most of the vegetables that you're gonna find in a supermarket, there is no comparison in the intensity of the flavor. And about the only thing I wish... See, I'm still an old man. Still going to my inventory to do simple things like this. Should know better, but I'm still doing the thing. Granted, I only found out about the inventory drop button like a month or two ago. And so that is compared to the roughly 14 years of Minecraft that I have played and all of the muscle memory that has given me about how to play this game. So yeah, so we're gonna try and excuse me, like I said, young counter. We're gonna try our best to remember to do things like that, because that was one of the beautiful things about modded Minecraft. About the time I started having any kind of interest in it, was one of the things that it allowed you to do was quick access into particular portions of your inventory. At least depending on the mods that you were running at the time. So, and I think that's one of the big things that I love about Minecraft. It's one of the things that keeps me coming back over and over and over again, is the developers from Minecraft keep looking at what the community is doing, what seems to be, really thrilling people in the modded community, and trying to reach out and find ways to implement that as part of actual Minecraft. But they're not sitting there trying to go wholesale, like, oh, okay, well, there's, so many thousands of people who are, playing Tinker's Construct, or I think this is the point. Let's go ahead and start doing 16s. They don't look at it as, oh, hey, we see that there's, 400,000 people playing Tinker's Construct. Well, then we're just going to straight up port Tinker's Construct in. It's been okay, what are they looking for? Alright, what do we think without destroying the meta for what has been designed into Minecraft already? What is it we can do that lets us get functionality for some of these things people seem frustrated by vanilla Minecraft? And from there, discern, like, oh, okay, if, that's where, as far as I know, a lot of the various new animals come from. Like, all these kinds of different things that we're looking at and going, oh, okay, this is very interesting. Like, now we are up to, with the introduction of the happy ghasts. Well, now that gives us a flying mob that we can ride now. So you can ride pigs, you can ride horses, and you can ride the llamas. You can ride the what are the ones in the, I can never remember what they are. The little, they remind me of the D&D creatures known as flumps. But they're the little guys that cruise around in the lava. You can ride those now. And it's interesting to me to see that they're going, oh, okay. So, like, one of the things that survival Minecraft has lacked, and they've addressed it in several different ways now, is there's nothing faster movement-wise than flying in creative. Like, there isn't in the game. Until they introduced Elytra. Well, now they have with the Happy Ghast, now you get this fun new, like, hey, everybody hates ghasts, except for now we can do the really cool thing of actually ride the ghasts. And it just changes some of the dynamics in a really, really fun way that keeps it interesting for those of us who have been here for a while. And I think that has been one of the greatest parts of Minecraft development over the years, is the way in which they hear what their community is frustrated by, wants to have addressed, what have you, and then they come up with their response to it. And usually, I'm not going to say they always get it right, but they usually come out with something that we're like, oh, okay, maybe that's not exactly what we were asking for, like, wasn't like our priority at the moment, but holy crap, mesas are awesome, or we love, and because of mesas, now we have all of the terracotta, all of that we can now start playing with. We can start adding those kinds of things. Concrete's been one I haven't really messed with. I need to get better about going in and seeing what the recipe is. And I think the big one that is a struggle, particularly in this particular world, is that it takes sand, and I have not found a desert biome. So sand is kind of out of the question. Plus, what is the most common advanced shovel enchant? It's that top one right there, Fortune 3. What does that do? It turns almost every block of gravel that you hit into flint, which in and of itself, not a huge problem, but it is when what your objective is to actually have the gravel to do things with it. And so it's in that sense, it's a little bit frustrating, but we live with it. We're big, strong lads. But yeah, it's just one of the things that absolutely fascinates me about Minecraft is how well they listen to what's going on, especially because this is one of the games that really has a massive follow. Like, I would say a good third or so of the reason that Minecraft is as popular as it is it was one of those first games that became YouTube and streamable with relatively little effort. Like, I'm sure back in the day it was not nearly as simple as it is for me to plug in and play the way that I do, that you guys can watch me live stream. But it was such an easy way, and like everybody came in, and it's fascinating to me to see how a lot of those early streamers, early YouTubers would come into Minecraft, and it truly was, like, I'm talking about the guys that were streaming this or making YouTube videos when there was no story structure whatsoever, like pre-Ender Dragon, pre-Nether, and came into the world and went, I can do some cool things here. And like, they're the ones pioneering, the original redstone devices, some of which are no longer even viable within the meta these days. And it's, like I said, it's just one of those that, like, it's an incredibly responsive game in that way. Now, I recognize it's not for everybody, and that's okay. I think that's one of the great things modern gamers have forgotten, is not every game is made to be played by every gamer. And that's not a bad thing. Like, I might at some point, if I had reason to, get into some of the Souls-style games of, high-intensity combat and whatnot. And if I do, anybody who happens to be watching is going to be laughing their ass off, because I'm pretty sure you're going to get a very, very full of struggle gameplay from me at that point. Whereas here in Minecraft, I've kind of mastered most of the game. I'm not saying I am perfect at it by any stretch of the imagination, but most of the mobs don't really present a problem for me. And so yeah, it's an interesting one. But again, like, and I find it interesting that Minecraft has been, like, even as they've gone and done things to expand their player base, they've never, I don't feel like they ever tried to throw away. That's where it was. That's where it happened. Damn, I am bad at this some days. Okay, well, we're just gonna make sure we do it the right way. And we'll... So at this point, that's 2 of them on this side that I need to correct. I guess I got distracted while I was talking with you guys, so... but yeah, it fascinates me that you have developers like, and again, it's... Minecraft is one of those games that is simple in... it's simple in what it wants you to do, but it is also a very complex game, in part because it allows players so much agency within the hard and fast rules of the game. See, almost did it again. So what do I mean by that? So in a shooter, like in a COD shooter, there's really only so much of the game that you can alter. It has very hard rules. The big ones are, you pick the mode that you're playing in, Granted, everything that I've seen lately is COD has gone to from the hey, you're playing everyman doing team deathmatch stuff to a system of playing battle royales, and you get specific heroes, and they add, basically we're getting away from, a lot of what COD was to begin with. And that's neither here nor there, but it has a pretty strict structure of what you're going to be doing in the game. Minecraft, you don't have a whole lot of restrictions on what you can do. Your restrictions come from how you can interact with the environment around you. And that's where things get interesting. Because you can choose, like for me, I've never really gotten into the redstone side of Minecraft. It's not been part of the game that I find to be enjoyable. Which is not to say it isn't enjoyable. And one of the things I already know, just based on what all I want to be able to do and how much that's going to demand me having quick resources by various means, rather than the old school, like, just run off, find a biome, and plunder it. I'm going to have to do things like, I'm going to have to figure out a villager breeding and sorting system to be able to get access to some of the things that, I happen to know I don't have ready access to. It's not that they're not in the world, but most of the biomes that I have found around my build are forests or plains. There's a couple spots of flower forest. There's a couple spots of taiga and things like this. And you get into some of the colder biome stuff. But for most of what's going on in my game around this Star Destroyer is the various biomes that are moderate temperature, the temperate climates. Back by World Spawn, there's some jungle, and that is the only one of the hot biomes that I've really encountered. But that means, like, okay, if I want to be using terracotta, we're gonna back this up a bit. I think I needed to go one more. Okay. Suppose that's a little janky in there, and sticking that in the middle there, but okay. So, but yeah, there's just certain things that as we're going through all of this, the same way like here in the oceans. Well, I have deep ocean and I have the kelp oceans. That's all the variety of ocean that I've seen. I have not seen any of the other biomes in the ocean. And it makes me a little bit sad, because it means, for one, I don't get to see the coral. And so far, having traveled northeast and northeast and south, for some distance in each direction, I haven't found anything, and I haven't found anything that is like guiding me to more of those more biomes. And so it's been an interesting thing. Well, at this point, because they've decided to enhance what villagers will trade for, and what you can do is, okay, well, I find out the block that causes villagers to take up stone crafting. Well, now I can start looking through and trying to open up as many of them as I can, and it's like, no, I don't need cobblestone, but like, let's start getting down into your more interesting trades and figure out of those what ones are again, I don't know, but I'm certainly hoping that terracotta is one of the trades that you can unlock for at least some of the villagers. Because it's one of the things that I know I'm gonna want to get a lot of. Excuse me. And have ready access to it, because it has so many uses, and they've really done a good job lately of adding blocks that work together and give you less discordant harmonies between block types. So like cobblestone and brick kind of works together. It certainly works better than like brick sitting on top of sand or dirt. And again, it's not like it's inconceivable to have them. It just, if you're thinking about the notion of building a structure, like, it's kind of a dumb way to put a structure together. There we go. Okay, that feels a little bit silly, but I am literally making this up as I go along. So, alright, now here's my question. I've been thinking about some things to start utilizing the notion that this is actually over in a spaceport. But as we can see, even just on the west side of the center line, I still have probably 4 more of these ribs to put in to give myself structure to build off of for the outer layer of Star Destroyer skin. And then we'll also have to come back and drop these down all the way to, because I have now established where the outer side of the hull is. Let's tick that yawn counter up again. So yeah, 4 more of these. I'm feeling a little bored of this. I think just thinking through what we got going on and plans I have for later, I think we're gonna go back, put the cobblestone back, and then go down to my resource gathering areas, and from those we're gonna go ahead and grab more granite, because I'm gonna need more granite for the tower that I'm building, that I'm going to say was probably the spaceport's like aviation direction. It's basically the same tower as it's the same as when you go to the airport and you see their tower. It's not so much the, oh hey, we have you on radar, alright, you need to come on this heading to land. It's the, okay, you're landed and you need to find the gate that you're supposed to be going to. Control tower. But I decided to start that in granite, which I've got a good bit of granite available. Especially because, let me check, I think it is in here. Okay, that is still all the stone, so then it is one of... So, oh, that's the cobble. That's the granite. I always manage to find the door. So that's going to be one of the big stones that I need to come up with. Excuse me. And the problem over here is a lot of this is really close to letting water in. Which is why I have built out an area. So I originally did it because that was just where my starter cave, when I cut down through the world to get into, forming a digging area / looking for caves and resources and what have you. It's where I found this level. So you'll notice the floor is at the level that, yes, there is deep slate here, but it is not, like, I haven't built my mining / stripping out area around that. So we're gonna at least get a bit more of the granite that I can get a hold of with relative ease. For all that, I do have plans to, like, at the moment, the way that I'm doing the outer skin is I'm just trying to get it all closed in. So again, right now that's building the... right now that means building all of those ribs to provide structure for most of that outer layer. The next step is going to be filling that all in with stone, because as I looked around at my options for a massive amount of resources that I can get with relative impunity, that are also of the appropriate gray colors. And of reasonable consistency to go, yes, you could, we can pretend that this is some kind of Star Wars magic stone concrete that they have found to build ships with. I mean, when you look at the fact that they can walk around any of their ships as though they are in Earth normal gravity, which is yet another reason why Star Wars is not science fiction per se. It is a fantasy in space. Just doesn't lessen the impact of the real stories, but it does alter what's happening. Again, it's the classic line that people who like giving it shit go to is that somehow Han Solo shaved off distance on doing a possible race. There's not really anything said about exactly what the Kessel Run is, aside from that it is a thing that he has done. And that the Millennium Falcon did it in less than 12 parsecs. So it's one of those things where if we're taking in those kinds of information, allowing that to fuel what's happening, one of the things that I remember pretty vividly from all of the expanded universes, how it is now referenced. So all of the novels with so many good ideas for advancing the state of the Star Wars galaxy and universe that came out between Return of the Jedi and the prequels. Some of them were way more radically, out there as far as what they did. But, I would say the vast majority of the things that I consider to be Star Wars came as a result of reading those various novels. And the only thing that I have seen that got into certain portions of Star Wars canon since then, for all that Dave Filoni has, I think, been trying his best to work with what restrictions he's been given to keep a lot of those stories alive as best he can, in referencing things in The Mandalorian, in the various clones shows. He's done a great deal to try and cement at least some of the characters that 90s Star Wars nerds loved. And I think one of the greatest ones that he's managed to enthrone, though I have not seen any of it to know if he, knowing what he has done with the Star Wars things that he has worked on, I imagine he does a good job of preserving who Grand Admiral Thrawn is. But I don't think he's been able to tell the various stories that brought him to us 90s kids, and why it is that we're all obsessed with Grand Admiral Thrawn. Because honestly, for all that I have more of the Michael Stackpole and Kevin J. Anderson books for Star Wars, I absolutely, like, I always forget about him and feel terrible when I remember him. But Timothy Zahn wrote some incredible books. But he's the one who's responsible for creating the character of Grand Admiral Thrawn. And he's just this wonderful, wonderful villain to throw into the books that he wrote. Like, he really starts providing this existential threat that, even though he doesn't get much of, like, he starts out, and it's not until he starts getting some of his, like, impressive victories over, I don't remember the circumstance that brings him up against Admiral Akbar, or if they actually, like, this is where there's so many timeline hujum-whatsits, and okay, whose books are you actually looking at for events that have happened in the galaxy since Return of the Jedi? Because they kind of, like, and not surprisingly, if you know anything about, setting up a government and armed forces and that, but, like, once the expanded universe let the rebels become the New Republic, like, you've got to build up a government, and part of that is, okay, what are we doing with our defense forces? Because we know we're going to need them. In this galactic war, we know we haven't gotten rid of all of our enemies, and we're not really, because we are the rebels, we're not looking to exterminate them, but we have to provide ourselves with actual capacity to counter and offer safety to the people that we govern. Well, I don't know if you have recognized this, but even in reality, galaxies are huge. And so there's inevitably going to be those who were part of the old system who don't want to give up. They don't want to lay down their weapons. They don't want to give up their big starships. They don't want to give up the power that they've been able to carve out. And so long as they're, it becomes okay, can we force them out of areas? Are they, entrenched in areas we're really concerned about? Or did they go ahead and find some area where it's like, oh, okay, they're kind of isolated at this point, and we can mop them up as we go. We don't have to immediately turn and engage full-scale, root them out, branch and twig warfare. And that's one of the things that, like, I really enjoy about a lot of that expanded universe stuff is they tried tackling from many different angles, like, okay, how do we take this group that was born rebelling against the Empire? They've succeeded in decapitating it, but Rome didn't fall in a day. Like, even if you go to the Roman Empire and you read your histories and all of this, like, Rome did not destroy itself in a single day. There were lots of little things that crept in over the years that, when you added the invasion of some of the first barbaric civilizations that chose not to integrate into Roman society, that's when you actually start seeing this existential threat. And by the time Rome has fallen, it was because it gave up on the idea of Rome. Because whatever your take on the events that led to the creation of the Battle of the 300 Spartans, whether you want to take the Frank Miller over-dramatized version thereof, or the older... Oh, crap. What is his name? I wish I could remember. I have the DVD of it, but it's like from the 60s, I believe it was. The 300 Spartans version, the way it gets told in most history books, like, it's a story that has stuck with us for many reasons. And most of them are, it shows that going back to when Greece had a great deal of influence on the world political stage at points, one of the things that they really... they were one of the first places, for all that all of the various city-states did not like various of the other city-states, there was already this notion of Greek identity. And the Greeks did not let anybody step on that, including Xerxes, and Darius before him, and all of this. So, and yet, when the Romans show up, and it's not simply because they beat the Greeks on the battlefield through essentially a more flexible infantry system. Like, if you look at tactics between the Greek city-states and the Roman Empire, like, the Roman legion was a significantly more flexible formation for infantry than the I believe that would have been the Macedonian, if you want the more modern use of the word, of the letter C. The phalanx as it existed by the time the Romans were starting to throw their weight around the Mediterranean. It really became, this huge tactical advantage to have a formation that had significantly more flexibility in its general makeup than what the phalanx had. That's why the legions won where at times the phalanx failed. But with this, you now have the Romans beating the Greeks, but one of the things that Rome was so good at was, we beat you, become Roman. And so it's just a fascinating look at, like, okay, what will humanity do if you give them an option to be a part of something? Especially if they see the things that they've been a part of are failing. If you offer them hope and dignity, where will they go from there? and it was intriguing to me to watch, like, reading all of those expanded universe novels that I did. And mind you, I'm still a middle school kid reading most of these, late 90s, early 2000s. But those books made me aware of politics in a way that even taking my government and econ classes, because those were still a thing when I was in school, it gave me a better sense of a chance to explore what can people do with the notion of nation state. Whether it's what do planets like? And I need to go hurry these back so that I can actually pick that up. I should have watched my inventory there. But I got myself talking about philosophy and Star Wars, and that's just not gonna end without me getting more interested in the things that I'm saying than paying attention to something so mundane as inventory space. But yeah, those books gave me new metaphors to engage looking at different kinds of political philosophies. Before, I'd have been ready to try and tackle something along the lines of The Prince. Good morning, love. Yes, your husband is downstairs rambling about Star Wars and philosophy. But and I still love those books. Those books are also why I am as frustrated with the things that have been coming up in a lot of products that have been given the Star Wars logo in recent times, because there seems to be this notion of, well, we can just make shit up because there was nothing to work with. Yeah, I know it does. Not like I'm surprised that I'm doing this. Just amused. And a lot of it is whether you think it's a good thing or a bad thing, one of the things that sits at the heart of the original stories George was telling is the fight between good and evil. Now you can dismiss some of his notions, especially some of the stuff that started coming out in terms of, and I'm not the first one to say this, but he very much took the view that Joseph Campbell's notions of myth and how that affects story, the uber myth, if you will, it's pretty obvious if you've read Joseph Campbell that George looked at it and went, this is prescriptive of, if you want to write a story that will last, you must do these various things, rather than looking at that and going, oh, okay, there are certain themes that seem to pop up throughout world literature. Now, sometimes, a Westerner reading, Japanese myths is probably going to get certain thematic elements wrong, because some of that just has to live within the, like, you have, the words may look like a certain thing to a Western audience because we don't generally engage in understanding the cultural things happening in Japan throughout the creation of their myths and legends and whatnot. And so there are certain elements within those myths that we look at and go, oh, you're talking about this, when I think there's certain stories, certain elements of those stories that a Japanese person would go, no, that's not what we're talking about at all, because we don't have the larger cultural reference points to sort that out. And again, there, we could get into so many different ways that could get applied, what have you. But it's one of those where it becomes very apparent when you are bringing your own culture and using that as the interpretive lens as you engage other cultures' sets of myths and whatnot. But, again, for Star Wars, one of the biggest things that you go to, and it's, I believe it's because it reflects the reality of the world, which is much of the story is good versus evil. There is there is an evil in the world. That evil is something that is beyond just humanity. And it gets countered by a good that exists free from the constraints of humanity. And it is, without trying to be too flippant, good is, like, you cannot measure good and evil against each other, save to go, evil is the absence of good. And the more completely good is absent, the more evil the things that we're talking about actually are. And again, this gets into all kinds of interesting philosophical discussions, some of which I'm not qualified to touch with a 10-foot pole. But that doesn't mean it doesn't interest me. And watching, one of the things that I loved about the expanded universe, all those books and everything, is they did get away from the strict hero archetype for some of the characters. So by that, one of the things that I look at and go, I don't necessarily see him as heroic the way that we frankly ought to be viewing Luke as the archetypical hero. The character is introduced in the X-Wing series, and he's basically a former policeman. He's a pilot, and he ends up in contact with the rebellion. He ends up in Rogue Squadron. And then, because of course we have to, he becomes... They find out that he is Force sensitive, and so he goes... in the book I, Jedi, he goes to train with Luke for a time before realizing, I have bigger fish to fry right now. I am not in a place to become a Jedi Knight right now. That's just not going to be... That ain't me, dog. And it's not as though he's, this super edgelord, what have you, but throughout the course of things, it becomes clear he's not motivated purely by the notion of good must triumph. Now, he certainly does. He certainly has a very distinct moral compass, which is contrasted by kind of his nemesis from his days as a policeman for the planet he used to live on, where he runs into basically a guy who thinks he looks... it's described as Moff Tarkin, but much younger. Like he's not as old as Grand Moff Tarkin, but he has the severe widow's peak, the very sunken cheeks, all those kinds of things. And who's basically just motivated by bureaucratic accuracy, I guess we'll call it, as a description of like what motivates his... Oh, right. Oh, that's water. That's water. Didn't do it. Let's hope we don't break into water here. But Koran, or Korin, depending on how you wish to emphasize your syllables, he's not motivated as much by those grand notions. Now, he does stand up against evil, but especially for I, Jedi, he ends up, hanging with these pirates, and his motivation is to find the people who kidnapped his wife. And he kind of throws away a certain amount of... Like, he doesn't throw away all of his morals. He doesn't suddenly become the, he's not the Jack Sparrow of the expanded universe or anything like that, where he just, falls off the deep end and is like, it's all about what makes me happy. And that kind of thing. But he definitely goes, I am no longer looking for the greater good of the New Republic. Circumstances forced me to, I tried doing that. I tried being the good little soldier or what have you, and at the end of the day, that lost me my wife. And so he goes on this, I'm more concerned about retrieving my wife, which somebody kidnaps my wife, you're going to find out exactly how quickly I can sort out all of the skills and whatnot to go full taken on you. But it's one of those things where it steps back from the epic hero of Luke's behavior, where he really is doing all of these things. And yes, he's got to sort out within himself, is he ready to stand against the evil of the Empire? Once he's faced with the reality of actually being able to do so. Because that's one thing, like, obviously when he meets the droids in A New Hope, like, he's way gung-ho to get in there and get to fighting. And I think part of what we see in part of what you get to see in his journey in A New Hope is he goes from I like the concept of going and fighting the Empire, it's evil, it's terrible, to he gets forced to see and have to engage with the reality of this is going to cost him. Now obviously we get into Empire Strikes Back, and he pretty literally comes up with a definitive cost to standing up to evil in Cloud City when his hand gets cut off. And there certainly is that, like, okay, there's now a unmistakable, undeniable cost that I've had to endure for my beliefs. But that's okay, because my beliefs are right, that he goes through. But again, with Luke being the archetypical hero, his testing is to go, okay, are you, when rubber hits the road, are you actually ready to make the sacrifices necessary? His best friend, who he was all excited to get out of Tatooine to go find and meet up with, dies within, hours of supposed real time of them reconnecting after his friend's been away for a long while. And then, and again, you kind of see the continued and settling concerns that he has to confront as you go through Empire Strikes Back, as you go through Return of the Jedi. And he has to acknowledge that the fight between good and evil costs you something. And I think that's one of the things that not every new Star Wars thing that they've done does this, but a lot of them seem to reflect what I think a lot of our culture tends to want, which is we want things comfortable, we don't want to have to sacrifice. We look at, we can see some things that are truly terrible in the world. And even with that, we then go, well, somebody will step up and do it. And, the hero is there to remind us in stories that sometimes you've got to be that somebody. You can't just sit back and go, well, somebody else will fight evil. No. You have a certain, like, if you want to see a world with less evil in it, you have a responsibility as a citizen of that world to step up and, again, I don't recommend doing this blindly, but stepping up and going, I have to actually sacrifice something along the way here to get a world like we all kind of want, where evil doesn't get to have a hold over everything. You have to stand up and fight. And one of the things that I think is a huge way to continue motivating yourself as you're doing this, you have to have some truth that is bigger and outside of yourself and not depending on whether you got enough sleep the night before or had some good food or you've seen your best buddy in a little bit, for some time. It's got to be something that when everything is shit, you still go, this is right, and I am willing to make the sacrifices to see it come about in the world. If you cannot do that, then do not take up the fight against evil, because you will eventually get crushed, and you will end up either, the standard is you become the very thing you hate. And there's very definite truths to that. But worse than concerning yourself about, will I become the thing I hate, I think the bigger impact to pay attention to is, can I get up and fight for the things that I believe make life better for as many people as possible? And do I even give a shit about making life better for, as many people as possible? Because to do that, it means you're gonna have to sacrifice some of your own comfort. Because not everybody gets to have everything. Life does not work out that way for anybody. And it sucks. It's not fun to be in that situation, but it is still the reality of the situation. And there's, we are all born as unique individuals. We have unique sets of experiences. And those all preclude, I am not my sister. And there are many, many ways that you can sit there and be like, and, acknowledge the reality of that. But, if you will, one of the things I want to look at is me saying I'm not like my sister. If there's anybody who I have all of the reasons in the world to end up at least sort of like, it would be the other person who shares the majority of the genetic mix that created me, right? Now obviously there are certain chromosomes that are inherently different because my sister is a woman. She has XX chromosomes. I'm a man. I have XY chromosomes. And, from there the differences just get more intense. And again, I love my sister dearly. But anybody who makes the mistake of thinking that one of us is like the other of us has never spent more than 5 minutes around both of us. Because it becomes very rapidly apparent that I am not her. And that's an amazing thing. I love my sister dearly. She is one of the best people I know. I hope she never hears this, because and even if she does, I don't think she'd believe me when I say, she's one of the people that if I was ever accused of being like somebody else, I would take it as a compliment to be told I'm like my sister. Because I do think she is that awesome of a person. And it is because of that connection that I have with her and how much I respect her that I go, it is a very good thing that I'm not her. we had enough fights as it was. And most of that wouldn't have changed. In fact, it would have gotten more intense had we been forced to, like, if we had been more or less the same person, it would have put so much strain on our lives that there's a good chance she and I would not be the friends to each other that we actually are at this point in time. Can't take that out because that's water. So I think we're gonna come up here and hope that. Okay, so. Okay. So this is what I'm most after. Let's harvest both of them, because since I'm not using the dye right now, if I really want to, I can come back through. I can tear the floor out underneath my feet and come back and replace it with diorite. So, but this will be one of the next things that happens in this area, where I will come up to a level and then try and start reflecting the resource gathering that I'm doing the next layer down. Eventually, this will probably all get cleared all the way down to bedrock, but we're going to take it bites at a time. I'd like to fill at least one, which really, really close on filling that one chest of granite. But with what I'm attempting to build, I think we're gonna find I need at least a couple of them. So let's swap you in here. Pop so that we don't fall down yet. Ripping the floor right out from under my own feet and trying not to fall down while I do it. So, alright, let's do that. Let's grab all these nice pieces here. They're pretty, yes, we love the pretty. So for right now, I'm not getting too concerned about splitting this up the way that I have the downstairs collections, mostly because I am going after a specific rock at the moment. This will open some things up and let me expand from there, which is what we want. And then, at some point we get to decide, do we make massive pillars of the world down here? Or do we just, enjoy the fact that I'm stripping out lots of resources? I think if I can figure out how to build something interesting, we will find a level where we go, okay, we're getting close enough to the surface. I just want this to be a giant empty space, and then figure out a massive pillar that will be repeatable and impressive down here to make something kind of akin to the Khazad-dûm, the hall of columns that they run through. Just like there's just this massive open area, and there are massive columns holding the area up. Is kind of what I'm picturing at some point to do with this. Because again, it's a forever world. This is a little close to make it connect up to the spaceport to go like full dwarven fortress on it. But that's not to say that I can't leave remnants to say that at one point the dwarves were here, and they have since moved on to other areas. Because again, at this point I've decided it makes sense to me go, this is my forever world, and I'm not just gonna try and do Star Wars builds the whole way through. Like, yes, Star Wars is something that I have a great appreciation for. It is a wonderful universe to get in and story tell. It is one of the movies that had a great deal of influence in me, like, pursuing my love of art to to the point that I went to college to get an art degree. Because I love the visual storytelling that happens in Star Wars. It's an impressive universe as far as that goes. And like as we go through and I encounter certain things, you're gonna hear me complaining about certain choices that they made. Like one of the big ones that the Empire is built of straight lines, but very few of those straight lines are perpendicular to each other. Because even in the TIE fighters where you're like, oh, but the cockpit's not, like, the cockpit is a ball. Like, it is, but it's clamped onto by a bunch of hexagons. Like, even if you look at when you look at the pylons that hold those solar panels in place, and those are built of hexagons. Well, hexagons don't meet at 90-degree angles, which means that it creates a certain aesthetic that, especially here in Minecraft, where everything is basically forced to meet at 90-degree angles. It makes for some very interesting ways that I'm going to have to sort out how to address that as I'm building. There's even some stuff on the Star Destroyer that I'm going, this is so much more complicated because we couldn't have planes meeting at right angles. But it also leads to, I think, some of the more impressive and story-driven reasons for making design choices. Like, when you see an Imperial ship, it doesn't get confused with a Federation ship. And that holds for most Star Wars vehicles. But it is, I would say, rather significantly more true of the Imperial side of things than the Rebel side of things. Because with the Rebels, they kind of, the biggest thing that they have is they've got curves on their ships. All of them have some kind of curve to them. But even there, you find a lot of, you cannot build with right angles. I think, in fact, perhaps one of the funniest things, if you could write it correctly, if you got the Star Wars writers and the Star Trek writers together and go, okay, let's bring these two fandoms together as a great portion of fans have wanted. The Borg is going to be the cube. The Borg cube is going to be one of those things that everybody from Star Wars is going to look at and be like, how does that work? That doesn't seem feasible. What? Because of the fact that, one of the design choices for Star Wars early on was that denial that everything had to meet at right angles. In fact, I guess George kind of insisted that no, that's not something that happens a great deal. And so now we have the ships that we have. And I am attempting to replicate one in Minecraft because I'm insane. And I'm okay with this message. Alright. So I got about a little less than 45 minutes before I need to start on doing more real life kinds of things. So what do we want to do? Let's go check our iron farm. Because I am trying to use that beautiful crunchy iron to help me make engines for okay. I haven't been super close to this, so probably been far enough away that it hasn't loaded, so. But, that's alright. Let's have a sticky. All those in there. And I'll have to figure out something that I can use all of that red dye for. I don't know. Yet. We'll get there. We'll get there. And when it comes down to it, I'm gonna end up needing y'all to remind me that red and white stripes imply one of two things, either circuses or candy canes, and we don't want to do either of those. Unless I've come up with a reason why we want to do those. But I don't think that will be a significant problem. Okay. It is just that, yep. There is some. That's what I thought. I thought I had put it over here. Up here. Damn, I'll boob. Oh, excuse me. So. We got about 20 or so minutes, 25 minutes. We're going to go down to the other deeps, because I had a thought the other day while I was out driving for work about a structure that would make, at least to myself, a great deal of sense to have constructed in a spaceport, because I've been trying to figure out what kinds of buildings to be making, as I'm doing all of this. So let's come. But one of the things that, vehicles need is fuel. So we're gonna see about making a nice fuel depot. And I think the fuel tanks that they will be drawing from are going to end up being of deep slate. I think that's what we're gonna go with here. So I need to get myself more deep slate, because much of what I have used so far has either become stairways or it has become, and I'm not worried about picking up tough, because while I may not have flip levels of obsession with tough, it is a really fun block, and I want to find good ways of using it for builds. Especially with the fact that this is a very wet spaceport, I think there will be some areas that it becomes the concrete that has been used to support various structures in the spaceport, but because there's so much water around, there's going to be algae lines and places where organisms have kind of started encroaching in on the spit and polish that you might expect. And that's okay. These are things that we want eventually. So, but yes, this is going to be another area where eventually we end up with a lot of this hollowed out. Because that's what I want. And I don't want to have to go too far to get the things that I like. And at this point, that requires that I come in and tear a lot of this out. And we will figure out things from here. For instance, I'm trying to decide if I want to go like super heavy dark colors for dwarves, which is typical, and I don't necessarily have a problem with leaning into the typical, but I also don't mind subverting some of that when I feel like there's a justifiable reason for it. So I'm half tempted to combine two of my favorite races in fantasy, and essentially have them, the way that each is described in their architecture, influence each other. And that would be having the Ogier and the dwarves kind of as a singular race, in terms of designs, where the dwarves build very lyrical, light, kind of go with the flow sorts of architecture. Certainly sturdy and strong, but with a lyrical side to it. And whereas I would say the Ogier are very, very lyrical and less concerned, though they build well, the Ogier are not concerned about their buildings appearing to be bulky, strong, imposing structures. Where I would say the dwarves are going to have a tendency towards that kind of function within their builds. So, but I don't... Basically, I want to be able to go, okay, it's Dwarven, so it will be stones of various kinds, but it is not necessarily, immediately restrained to it's dark, it's dour, it's, that kind of thing. But we'll see. Because for right now, these are going to be... all this beautiful deep slate is going to end up as... we'll grab you guys that way. So yeah, we'll just have to see how I choose to progress with that when the time comes. For now, this deep slate will be, fuel storage for fueling up spacecraft. We can go after that to the notion of where we're going from there. Oh, yappers. Alright, let me get some glub. I love the sounds that water makes when it comes out of those burbling, glugging. Water is messing around with air in a closed space type sounds. Oh, come here. Alright, so you've got oh, wow. Since I screwed it up, that, why does that look? Oh, is deep slate directional? I don't think I realized that. Interesting. Anyway, I am looking for the cobbled deep slate, because unfortunately, deep slate is only deep slate. It has no subcategories. And I am after subcategories. But yeah, we will have to figure out where we're going with this, because you wouldn't want your fuel storage too close to where a heat source is likely to end up being. See, that's exactly what I mean. I went through all of that, and it all turned to flint. Which is one of the reasons why I do not like fortune shovels. I use it because I got it, but it's not the aid one might wish for. That's some pretties I haven't seen for a while. Oh boy. That was 6 of them. Alright. Okay, I think we're going to break out here, and then I'm basically full unless I get rid of that flint, which I will. I think that's pretty good progress for today. Hi, zombie. Hi, zombie. Die, zombie. I wonder where you got in here from. How'd I get close enough? Oh well. But see, that is one of the things that I like about playing here on normal mode is if you're not paying attention, you know. I was lucky in this case; it was just a zombie, not a. It was just a zombie. It was not a creeper or something like that, which would not have killed me, but it sure would have scared the snot out of me. Because I thought I had that floor set up a bit better than that. Apparently not, which I can't argue with. It clearly spawned in. Oops, too far. Too far. I went past. Yep. I'm not used to coming up here this way. So, oops. There it is. Actually, I've got one upstairs, and I've got ores. So let's just take it all up to the big storage up in the sky. Yep. See? Storage in the sky. Alright. My goodness, we have wandered some very interesting topics in my brain. I'm not upset by that by any means, but it is the reality. Alright, more of those. And I think I've got space down here for another granite. And with where we're at time-wise, and I am running out of idea steam, I think we may... I think we're going to go ahead and call it. So, do that and switch over. Howdy, folks. So, yeah. So that was another day. Put in a couple of ribs for the Star Destroyer and gathered a bunch of granite to be able to build up the traffic control tower. So that'll be a lot of fun to see how far we can get that going. And started digging out some deep slate to make some fuel storage. And trying all the while to not get myself too distracted by, oh, I want to do these projects, and forgetting to actually do, the Star Destroyer project that I have set this up to be. But it's good times. At this point, the plan will be I will catch you guys kind of the same time on Friday, and we will do some more stuff. I have chance to think about what I'd like to be doing between now and then, which will be loads of fun. And yeah, so we'll have that. Once more, I am TanktheElder. The channel is Magic and Mayhem, and please, please, please feel free to like and subscribe. This is the time that I make that plea, because I'd like this to go somewhere. I'd like to build something here where we show up and we have fun and we talk about stuff and all of that. And the best way to start growing that is for folks who find it to come on over and like and subscribe, so the algorithm goes, hey, maybe there's a little bit of something fun here. And yeah, so I will catch you guys Friday, and I will catch you